Marcia Mecklenburg is a 1975 graduate of Edmonds High School. Although she was a talented three-sport athlete competing in volleyball, basketball, and track, Marcia made her mark at EHS on the track. A talented thrower, in the spring of 1975, she became a two-time state champion in the shot put and discus and set a state meet record in the shot put with a throw of 48.21 and a quarter. This throw remains the longest throw in EHS, WHS, and Edmonds Woodway High School history. After high school, Marcia competed in track and field at Seattle Pacific University, where she was a four-time national qualifier in the shot and discus. She then went on to compete at the national and international level for many years, including appearances at 3 Olympic trials in 76, 80, and 84, and AAU national championships as well. Taking her passion for throws into her profession, Marcia went on to pursue a collegiate coaching career as an assistant coach at SPU, Montana State, Washington State, and is currently in her 25th year as the women's head track and field coach at Eastern Washington University. Marcia Mecklenburg.
I did write a speech. Thank you very much. This is truly an honor for me. As I was walking in and you were checking in on the front table, I noticed this wasn't part of the speech. That your dining room or lunch area was just off to the side. And it reminded me of these rolls they made when I was here, my senior year in high school. Fresh made rolls every day for lunch. They were still warm from the oven. One day it would be white bread, the next day it would be whole wheat. They would put a dab of butter. They'd cut a slice in the middle and put a dab of butter in it, and it would melt. So it was warm with melted butter, and it would be dripping, almost soaked into the bottom of the roll. I was known really as the dessert queen, but I would trade my dessert for a second one of those rolls. They were so good. I don't know if they make them anymore, but they were really good. My only year here at Edmonds was my senior year. And I came in when I was registering for classes. I registered in the gym, and I went up to this European history table, and I thought, oh, that'd be a good class. I loved history. That'd be a good class to take. And I went up, and the person who was registering us said, you need to get the okay from your teacher. So I went and found the teacher, and he said, what kind of grades have you gotten in history? And I said A's and B's, and I had gotten A's and B's in history. And he said, okay, sure, you can take the class. 13 of the smartest kids from Edmonds High School, the smartest student from Woodway High School, were in that class, and myself. We won first quiz. They knew I was not the smartest person in that room. And then to top it off, the teacher was Mr. Bennett, who ended up being my track and field coach that year. So that was a really interesting year for history. One of my favorite classes was creative writing. It was taught by Mr. Hansen, and our first assignment was to write a short story, and then you had to read it in front of the class, and then the class would critique the story. There were about 30 students in the class, and some of those short stories were really long. It took 2 weeks to get through everybody in that class. And I was very shy. I was painfully shy. No one knew me. It was our first year in Edmonds. And finally, Mr. Hansen said, is there anyone left? Everyone had read their story. And I raised my hand. I was the last person. He said, okay, go ahead, read your story. So I read my story. It was about 1 put of the shot put in a track and field meet. It was the final put, which I won. I did not PR. It was a fictional story. But when I was done reading it, it was dead silent in the classroom. And I kind of looked around, and it was like we were like, what's the shot put? And Mr. Hansen goes, does anyone have anything to say about the story? And no one said a word. And Mr. Hansen said, that's right, that story was very good. And I was like, yes! And finally he turned around and he was going to explain something, you know, the next assignment, and I finally heard someone say something. And they said, it was only a page and a half long. It was a short story. That year we had about only 13 girls turned out, if that many, for the track and field team. It was a very small team. So they put me on the short relay. So I ran a legless short relay. And after the first meet, I knew Mr. Bennett was probably up in the stands going, what did I do? And I know every time I ran that relay, the coaches were gritting their teeth. I mean, I did a lot of dumb things on that relay. And Mr. Bennett was so kind. He never said anything bad about it. I couldn't believe it. And that I know, just even looking back when I found out I was going to get this award and knew that they were, thought about this relay, I thought about the coaches and how they must have been gritting their teeth every time I did the relay. And I want to let them know that my mom chewed me out for every ding-a-ling thing I did on that relay. So I hope Mr. Bennett, I know he's not here anymore, he's passed away, but if he's looking down, I want to know that. With that aside, even, the relay was a lot of fun, even though I kind of joked around about it. But that senior year for me was magical. This was the first time that we actually lived on the water. My dad worked for the Forest Service, so we lived on Forest Service stations my whole life, out in the woods. So we lived on the water, and we were out salmon fishing and hunting for the elusive gooey duck every other weekend. It was my first year that I won the state championship in the shot put and discus. I qualified for nationals, both junior nationals and senior nationals that year, and I made it to finals in both of those meets. I qualified for the U.S. junior team to compete against the Russians. I competed in the Pan American Youth Trials that year and came in third. I was ranked third in the nation in the shot put. And I beat the #1 and 2 ranked girl that summer in both. In those national and international meets, I was able to beat those 2 girls. So that summer was just a dream come true for me, and that whole year. I have to thank my mom and dad. This was the mid-1970s, so organized women's sports and Title IX were just getting started, so it had to have been very difficult for them to have a daughter whose her vision was to be the greatest thrower in the world. But they got me a javelin after my freshman year in high school, and my sophomore year they got me Sears plastic hoods, cement weights. No one has ever used Sears plastic hoods, cement weights as much as I use those cement weights. And with that, I need to thank Mrs. McNeely and Mrs. Bozich, who were both PE teachers here my senior year. Those Sears plates got used, but it wasn't enough weight so they brought in their husband's weights for me to use. And that strength I gained that year with all those weights made a huge impact on my success. I have to thank my sisters Cindy and Patty. They got dragged to every all-comers meet and every summer club track practice because I was too shy to go alone. I have to thank my sister Dot. When I was in the 7th grade, she was a freshman in high school in Estacada, and she was an 800 runner. And she had qualified for districts, and my dad and I went to watch her run, and the gun went off, and she just took off. And now as a coach, I would go, my mind would be like, uh-oh. But as a 7th grade sister, I was like, yes, she's winning, she's doing awesome. And she was like 30 yards in front, and she kept the lead going into the final lap. And down the back straightaway, they started reeling her in, the other runners. Final curve, one of her teammates caught her and passed her, but 2 qualified for state. So it was like a dogfight. On the last straightaway, there were like 5 runners trying to get to that line in 2nd place. And I was just so excited and so proud of her. I couldn't even talk, or couldn't even yell. I was just jumping up and down. And when she crossed the finish line, I mean, I was so overcome with emotion. It was all I could do to keep my tears, keep from crying. So I ran up to her and I was patting her on the back, and she turned to me and she said, she looked up and she goes, I think that race was harder on you than it was on me. Well, that race changed my life. I didn't become a distance runner, but I did become a thrower, and then I became a coach. And it's been an amazing journey, and my journey still continues. So again, I want to thank you. This is an amazing honor for me, and thank you all very much.